all y'all in here at the same time in the same place. So now that we got all y'all here at the same place, welcome to This and That. I'm your host, Sander, where we're talking about this, that, and everything in between. Today, we were going to be talking about some real estate trends in 2024. You guys are going to be seeing a lot more trends in real estate coming into 2025 because of the new practices that are going to be going on after November. So before I get into that, I just want to make sure that you guys like and subscribe. Make sure that you guys take the time to join the membership because we're going to be talking about a lot of real estate stuff today. So you guys, if you are a real estate connoisseur, you want a connoisseur, sorry. Yeah. Or if you've just got some Q&As about it, you guys can always go ahead and throw your comments in the comment section. Or for those of you that are on TikTok, you can click to be invited into the forum. We can bring you up onto the screen pretty much live, and then you guys can ask your questions live and in person. For the rest of you guys that are talking to me on Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter, we have the ability for you guys to click the link, approve the mic, approve the camera, and you will be brought on to the show. As it stands right now, a lot of the people that come onto the show will, when they put their comments up through the YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter sections, then your comments can be presented onto the screen in real time. But for those of you that are on TikTok, we're still working on integrating you into the rest of the platform. So just make sure that you guys take the time to join into the membership or like and subscribe, share it, follow. For those of you that are on TikTok, because we're about to start talking about some real estate stuff today, just know that on the bottom right side, you have the link to the YouTube page if you want to subscribe there, but also follow us on the TikTok platform because we are trying to get to our 100,000 viewer goal, 100,000 follower goal. Because the goal is first to try to get ourselves a stream key so that we can integrate you guys with the other 3 platforms that we're streaming from. So kind of need at least 10,000 of y'all to do it so that we can stream from all areas. But, I'm an overachiever. So I said, fuck it, 100,000. Let's go for 100,000. We are live 7 nights a week, 9 Eastern, 8 Central, 5 Pacific. So make sure that you guys try to swing around. We do kind of operate on CP time. We're still working on this internet situation. The new modem is here. It is active, but the quality of service depreciates throughout the evening. So there's a strong possibility that I might have some technical difficulties like I did last night, but we're going to work around it to the best of our ability until, you can find a better quality service because when you're streaming, you're at the mercy of the service provider, and there's not much that we can do about that. So let's get this underway. One of the first things I want to talk about when you're looking at the best buyer's markets, the first thing that people have to consider as a person, as an individual, is where do they want to live. So typically when you're trying to move in a hurry, you don't really care where you want to live. You're just trying to find some place nearby that is very affordable for you to transition from one location to the next. You try to stay inside of the same city. You definitely stay inside of the same state, and you try to find some place that is available. If you're taking your time to move, you might try to find something inside of your state within the same reasonable proximity of your place of employment or your kid's school. And there are some situations where you might move closer to a better school for your kids and be further away from work. Or you might try to find some place that's kind of reasonably in between the two. And depending upon what school your kids are going to next year, you might actually find out a place that is closer to your kids' next school, since you're going to be you're intending on staying in this house for an extended period of time. So you probably, if you're dealing with middle school and junior high school kids and you're deciding to make a move, you might want to move closer to the kids' high school than the kids' middle school or junior high school, because when they change grade levels, they will change schools. And when they change schools, that school might be in a different district. So if they're going to be going to a completely different school anyway, you might say, you know what, I'll just move my kid to such and such location because that location will give my kid the best education. Now, problem is that the most desirable places to go have a higher demand for real estate. When you're buying real estate, you're looking at the higher the demand, the lower the supply, the higher inflation. And this is why we have to experience things like shrinkflation. We have to experience things like inflation, is because when we get used to a certain quantity of something at a certain value, we then, when they shrink the size, we consume twice as much because we're used to the larger size. Then, when we get used to paying the inflated price for the smaller size, then they return it back to its original larger size and charge a higher price. Then we want the larger portion in order for us to get what we were used to, what we were satisfied with, and now we have to pay a higher price to get the larger portion. We get used to paying the higher price for the larger portion. They disband or dismiss the smaller portion and then do it again. And that keeps happening, which causes inflation. In real estate investors buy properties on a regular basis. They renovate those properties in a timely fashion without the expectations of delays for constructions, code violations, permits, stuff to that effect. And they typically put those houses up on the market with the expectation of those houses being sold. Now, if the house stays on the market for a extended period of time, they typically start reducing the value of the house, the sell asking price of the house, in order to make the sale. Now, the thing is that typically, if you're trying to buy a house in a buyer's market is a market where there are more houses up for sale than there are people willing to buy houses or able to buy houses. Because you have to understand that up until recently, interest rates on houses was as much as 6.5%. And that's a lot of money for a $500,000 house in some situations. And that deters people from being able to purchase a house, because one of the requirements for purchasing houses in some situations is putting down 20 to 30% of the value of the property in order for them to start mortgaging you the property. And the average American does not have 20 to 30%, because 20 to 30% is typically 20 to 30 $1,000 for every $100,000 that the house costs. Now, granted, you can have one of those deals with the mortgage where they expect you to only pay 5 or 10% of the value of the house, and then they modify your payments where your monthly payments are higher. There's a larger quantity of interest on the back end. They may even give you balloon payments, and a balloon payment is where the value that you're paying this month is smaller, where you're paying more towards the interest and less towards the premium. And then as the years go by, your monthly payments increase, where you have larger payments on the premium, but your monthly payments are going to be higher now. So the first few months, first year or two, you might have only been primarily paying the interest, and now you're paying the interest and the premium. If at all possible, it's always better to try to get fixed payments so that it's the same amount every month for the full totality of the contract. You could work it out with your financer as to whether or not you're going to have larger payments in the beginning or larger payments at the end. If you're going to be dealing with an increase in payments somewhere, I would recommend that the larger payments start at the beginning of ownership of the property, because over time, the longer that you're in possession of the property, the more likely that you're going to have a change of careers. You're going to have all kinds of other things that happen in your life. The standard of living is going to change. Your availability for capital is going to change. And then you're going to have this problem where you're going to have more bills coming in than you have money, and you're not going to have the ready capability of covering that mortgage in later dates and times. So if your mortgage was a fixed rate, you could say, well, put my money aside for the rent first, and then I'll figure everything else out. Or put my money aside for the mortgage first, and then I'll figure everything else out. And that's probably the best policy when you're buying your own personal house. But if you have the ability to have one of those fluctuating payment options, you want to have the larger payments in the beginning. But even if you don't have a fixed rate, if the smaller payments are towards the back end as time goes on, where your payments might start high in the beginning and then schedule themselves down to a lower amount over the years, instead of you paying $1,000, $2,000 a month for your mortgage, you'll start paying $1,000 to $500 to something like that, and it kind of just tear down. Now, you can't get that. You can't get that. I completely understand. Any of those real estate connoisseurs that wants to come in here and try to chop it up, by all means, rip it to shreds, put some insight on. If you've got that much knowledge that you're willing to share, let me know. I'll bring you up onto the show as a guest, and you can tell us what we need to know about real estate, how we should invest, where we should invest, and what you think we should do if you don't believe that the knowledge that I'm capable of providing to you is sufficient enough for you overly experienced individuals. But for the rest of you guys that still trying to figure this out, still trying to get started, but you're just trying to get started, I got to tell you, first things first, if you're going into real estate as a business, you have to understand that you will have to have those appropriate licenses and permits and registrations with the city and state that you're working in. When it comes down to real estate, you have to have certifications in whatever states that you're buying and selling in. That I can't say that that's necessarily a universal expectation for rental properties, that you should be able to rent without being an actual real estate agent. If you have a real estate business, then your business, to do business in that state, your business must be registered with that state. That's probably the biggest catalyst in this scenario that we're going to be talking about today while we're talking about everything real estate. But what I want you guys to recognize is that in this particular discussion, that you got to take into account the fact that if you're trying to buy a place from a buyer's market where the value of the house is negotiably less than the rest of the market, you're looking for a place that is going to have a lot more available properties, hopefully at a more reasonable amount, and then you're going to collect those properties and hold them. Now, when I talk to you about real estate, unlike fix and flippers, unlike wholesalers, because we are going to eventually segue into wholesaling, we are going to segue into situations where you're going to be doing buy and holds and in addition to fix and flips. So I want you guys to understand that, yeah, we're going to cover a lot of these things in a lot of different ways. But the thing that I want you to pay attention to today is that I'm talking to you about getting it and keeping it, not trying to get it and get rid of it. And one of the reasons why I want to talk to you guys about getting it and keeping it over getting it and getting rid of it is because when you get it and keep it, you actually have those massive tax credits that I talked to you guys about before. You also, when you get it and keep it, you have the ability to mortgage or remortgage because you have a lot of tax deductions that are involved with first and second mortgages. Now, keep in mind, if you pay off a first or second mortgage, then you can go back around and get you a first mortgage again. So the first mortgage is the first time you mortgage a property. The second mortgage is the remortgaging of the same property without paying off the first mortgage. Now, you want to make sure that when you're doing business in real estate that you pay attention to the number of times that you remortgage the same property. But when you're thinking about mortgaging properties, you want to make sure that you also take into consideration the fact that if you are mortgage a property to get it, and then you remortgage it with another property to do a deal, that you keep track of how many times that you've actually mortgaged that property, how much value is on that property versus how much money you borrowed against that property. Typically, I would prefer to only mortgage each property one time. If you've got to, for whatever reason, mortgage it a second time, you kind of want to just pay attention to your business strategy as to how you're going to reincorporate these things into one another, and to see what you want to do with your strategy as far as second and third and fourth mortgages on the property, if that's even required. But when we're sitting here discussing today about those buyers markets, because it's actually a real estate strategy for if you're going to go and buy something and do a buy and hold, you're going to try to buy something where you can negotiate with the seller to get the house at a lower rate. you can get a house in a buyer's market, even if it is a rehab house, for a lesser amount. If there are larger quantities of houses up for sale, then the market can sustain. Then even the rehab houses, the fix and flips, are qualifiable for negotiating down on the house. Now, granted, depending on the investor that invested on that property, he or she is going to potentially try to negotiate a reasonable quantity of money so that he or she can walk away breaking even on their deal. Or if they're taking a loss, they're not taking too much of a loss. So you're not going to be able to buy it from them for the same amount of money that they bought it from somebody else. But it is likely that you might be able to talk them down $20,000 or $30,000 on the property in comparison to what they were originally asking for, depending upon the condition of the property and the timeline that they've held it and the ability for them to get rid of it. So one of the first things that you're going to be looking at when you're looking at trying to find buyer's markets is looking at how long the houses are sitting on the market and looking at how many houses are being sold in that market area. Now, a market area is the neighborhood that the house is being sold in, the city that the house is being sold in, the zip code that the house is being sold in. That's the market area. Now, market region is going to be the state, the East Coast, the West Coast kind of situation. But the market area you're looking at, if you're, for example, out in Florida trying to buy a house, the market area over there would be all of the other available houses in Florida, depending on what city you're in trying to buy those houses in Florida. Now, if you were in California, the market area would be the houses being sold in California, and how many houses are being offered for sale in California. So when you think about that, then you think about the list that I just generated today, then you come to understand that there are buyers markets in the United States that are not all in the same location in the still seller's market average across the United States. So out of the 50 states, I've found about 11 states that are reasonably lower in sales of real estate, which is, in a sense, increasing the ability to talk the seller down on the offering price. One of the tips and tricks I would like to throw down real quick, though, is that if you're looking at real estate property, one of the first things you want to look at is how long the house has been offered. And typically, if you're utilizing online software to find out exactly how long the house has been up there, get visual images of the house, when the house had photos taken, the condition of the house today is not necessarily the condition of the house when the photos were taken. Typically, the condition of the house would be worse. Very rarely will you have a situation where they will take pictures of the house, improve the quality of the house, and not take updated pictures of the house, because the value of the house is visually the condition of the house. So if you want to get the most money out of your house, you want to sell it with the best quality photos that you can get on the house. So if the photos aren't that good, that probably means that you've got some questions you need to ask about that house. Likewise, when you're thinking about picking a house in a buyer's market, you're looking at the market area, what are the houses being sold in that area, what the amounts are for the houses being sold in that area. And when you're trying to compare, especially when you're looking at after repair value or market value, you're trying to find 3 to 5 houses within a reasonable block area of your house that is the same style of house as the house that you're trying to buy. So if you're looking at a 3-bedroom house with a 2-car garage, you're trying to find 3 to 4 bedroom houses with 1 to 2 car garages that may or may not have a pool in them, so that you can kind of reasonably compare how much this particular house is going for in the neighborhood of houses within the area of that house. And that is the value of the house, not the sell value or the asking price. Actually, it's not the asking price. That's just the value of the property. So some people have certain value over the value of the house is their asking price. Some places have certain value under the house's value as the asking price because they're trying to get rid of the property. So you want to take a look at these things. Looking into the history of the house You are able to see how long the house has been owned by the same owner. You can also see how many times the house has been listed for sale from the first time the house was listed for sale until now, how long the house has been put up for sale, how often it was taken down from sale, and what those values were. You can also then determine, based on the fluctuations of values from that particular house, you can actually determine whether or not the owner of that house is willing to reduce the value of the house and how much they might be willing to reduce the value of the house. Because if you think about the fact that the house was priced at a certain value, and then that value has depreciated by 10,000 or 20,000 a month every 6 months over the past 3 years, the house has been sold or up for sale for over 3 years, but they've taken a listing down and put the listing back up repetitively, and the house is still not sold. You might be able to talk the homeowner into reducing the price even further, but their original expected value has already been reduced. So you might actually have them tell you, no, I've been waiting all this time. I can wait even longer for somebody to give me what I'm asking for. But you also have those people that are really trying to get rid of the house, and they may be willing to shave $5,000 or $10,000 extra dollars off of the house just to get rid of the house if you're gonna give them cash up front for the house. Whether you already have a mortgage lined up or whatever, if you have a source of payment for them where they'll get their money within 30 days, then they may say, you know what, yeah, I'll shave a little bit off the house to get rid of the house. So think about this when you're looking into your buyer's markets. Now, typically houses are sold, hopefully 30 days into ownership. And hey, what's going on, King? So when we're looking at those houses that are typically sold within 30 days, they go up on the market last month, they're gone this month. They go up on the market this month, they're gone last month. When you're dealing with those, hey, I'm doing good, bro. I was actually today giving some financial advice to some people, kind of give you guys some tips and tricks about how to buy property from a business standpoint, not just home ownership, but this helps for home ownership too. Because if you're trying to buy yourself a house and you want to negotiate on the value of the house, going into a buyer's market where you're in an area where more houses are being sold than being bought could aid you in your ability to get a lower value on your house. But if you're trying to buy houses and turn them into rental properties, you utilize the same methods as a buyer as you would utilize as a investor to negotiate with the seller to acquire ownership of the house. The only difference is, as a investor, you have more knowledge and consideration of the condition of the house, trying to get buyer's credits and reducing the value of the house even further after you talk them down on their asking price. You can even negotiate with them that you will ignore buyer credits off of an inspection of the house if they're willing to reduce the house by a certain value. And then that kind of gives you a list of things you know you got to fix, but they know that regardless of what all you got to fix on the house, you're not spending $5,000 to inspect the house so that you can determine that there's certain shit you got to fix on the house. Because typically it is the buyer's responsibility to do the inspection, not the seller. If the seller has inspection information, you can ask them for that if they've gotten a house inspected recently. And also, if you've guys got an appraisal recently, if they provide you with that information, that also benefits you as well, so that you would be able to buy the house and have documented value of the house when you're providing that information to your mortgage company that's going to be fronting you the money for this house, which kind of helps you with talking to your mortgage agent about not having to pay as much money up front. Because, I mean, if the house is more valuable than the amount of money that you're asking for, typically mortgages and loans on property is usually about 60% of the after repair value or the market value of the house. So your $300,000 house is probably going to give you a $250,000 sell value, give or take a few $1,000s, because of its current value. So if you're mortgaging the house for $350,000, or if the house is valued at $350,000 and you're trying to get you a mortgage for $250,000, they're less likely to tell you no based on your financial proof of being able to pay on the loan, the level of credit that you're using if you're utilizing credit, and the house being utilized as collateral towards the mortgage kind of shows that if you don't pay, they get the house. So they're more likely to cooperate and work with you on those situations. So I just tell you, hey, try to find you a house in a market that's a little less competitive for buyers, which gives you the ability to negotiate down on the property. So moving on with the discussion, one of the better things that I've come to understand when we're dealing with buyers markets is that while there are different markets in different cities and different states, I've come across some that are pretty good for us. And I've actually noticed that as I go down this list that some of these houses scale up in cost, but they are pretty good houses that you could actually utilize if you're dealing with the whole like buy and hold scenario. Because also keep in mind, the median house being sold is the middle average property, which likewise would give you the capability of buying presumably a ready to move in house that you don't have to do any maintenance on. For those of you who consider the difference between buying a house, a rehab house, putting up 50 grand to rehab the house, spending 6 months to 18 months to rehabbing the house, depending on what you're supposed to be doing, because technically, if you've got a good crew and you do good about your business sense with negotiating on the property of the house, and you maintain a limit as to how much you're willing to maintenance on a house, you are more often than not going to find yourself spending $10,000 per week on repairs up to approximately about 5 weeks if you're doing an average rehab on a house. And that should give you the ability to change out the kitchen, living room floors, walls, paint the outside of the house. It's going to be more if you're doing a roof, because the roof is $150,000 to $250,000, and if it costs you $10,000 per week to repair, you're looking at 25 weeks of repair when you're doing a roof replacement, but probably 6 months. But you would estimate it about $10,000 per 7 days to do the repairs. So when you're valuing how long is it going to take for you to fix this house, well, if you've got about a $60,000 repair bill, you're looking at about 6 weeks of repairs or more. So then if you are going to start showing the house, you're going to show some of the house as soon as you gain ownership of the house, gives you more time to market the house before the house is finished to be sold. And that gives you the ability to try to get somebody to come and get it as soon as you finish fixing it. But after you finish marketing the house, if you're fixing and flipping in a optimum level, then you're likely to he said he would be living in the streets if you got to pay that much every 7 days. Damn, no, yo. So here's the thing. What's going on, Brad? What's going on? So the thing is that if you're buying a house, you definitely are back, Brad. If you're buying a house for rental properties, if you're buying a house to buy and own a house to rent out to somebody else, to fix it, you would be paying that $10,000 a month. If you're $10,000 a week to fix it back up, to rent it out to somebody else. If you were buying it for yourself, you would actually, oh, my dad ain't back though. Oh, that's okay. If you are buying it for yourself, then you don't necessarily have to spend all of that money repairing the house in the very beginning as soon as you get the house. Typically, people who want houses, they want them ready to move in. So you buy the house as is, you move into it satisfied with the condition that it's in right now, recognizing that some things might need to be done. Like there might be a hole in the wall, whether it be a small hole, like a door handle went through a wall or something like that, or if some walls need to be painted or something like that, you accept it as is, you move into the house, and then you just live there. The same way people in financial constraints are desperately trying to move, you might move into an apartment that somebody moved out of and they have not even renovated the apartment. It's reasonable enough for you. You'll take it as is if they waive your security deposit because you don't have enough money. You got to move right now. So if you don't care what condition the house is in, then you can take it, the condition that it's in, and you can just move right in. And then if something needs to be fixed, whenever you get the money, you go and fix it. But if you're trying to fix the house and then rent it out to somebody else, if you don't want to fall into the category of a slumlord and also have to deal with the laws in some cities and states that are enforced for the improper conditions of a rental property, you're going to want to renovate the property before you rent it out, which means that if it's not already ready to move in when you get it, you have to make it ready to move in before you rent it out. So when you are trying to, right, for sure. So if you're trying to decide, should you buy a ready to move in property versus fixing it yourself and hooking it up, is completely up to you. But the difference between the value of the house ready to move in versus the value of the house with $50,000 or $60,000 worth of damage done to the house that needs to be repaired, whether it's wear and tear or like somebody deliberately destroyed the house, you're going to see the difference in that in the price. You might see a 4-bedroom house for $150,000, where the average 3 to 4 bedroom house is between $350,000 and $450,000. I can tell you right now that without even looking at that house, if a 4-bedroom house is being sold at $125,000, which is almost 25% of the value of the houses being sold in that same market area, the repairs on that house is probably $70,000 to $100,000. And the person in possession of the house doesn't want to spend that money, because typically what investors try to do is to pick the house up for half of market value, put in a third or 25% of market value in repairs at the most, sell it for double what you spent on it, pay back the interest to the people that you owed, that you borrowed money from, pay the crew that did the work. So the interest is going to come out of your money, usually going to be 20 to 40% of the money that you are selling the house for. The people that are helping you flip the house, be it brokers, real estate agents, construction workers, is going to come out of the other 40, not 40%, the other 20 to 40%. So you're going to be looking at around 60 to 75% of the money is going to go towards paying everybody and paying back the interest. And then the remainder you're going to be looking at is like the other 25%, which leaves you with $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 average out of the sale of your house. Now, if you're doing it big and you're the broker or you're the agent, you don't have to pay all these extra people, you're looking at potentially having $50,000 to $100,000 extra dollars walking away from it, because your $125,000 house cost you $200,000 total. You sold it for $400,000. You paid everybody off with $100,000, and then your profit was $100,000. So King said, side story, you heard about what Diddy did. I mean, Diddy did a lot. That's why they were talking about the 350 something adult toys in Diddy's house. I told y'all he was acting like Hugh Hefner. It's just that Diddy's parties did not have a lot of adults in those parties, and that's why Diddy's doing 30 plus 1 years. But back to the topic. When we're looking at specifically the value of the house that you're trying to get your hands on versus the ability to flip that house, that's why you start seeing those $400,000, $450,000 houses being reduced down to $375,000 and $350,000, because sometimes the investors use investment capital from short-term loans where they have 12 to 18 months to flip the house and get the money back to the lender, and they're reaching the end point of that particular contract. They also have situations where the holding cost is starting to cost more than the profit margin that they were projecting, which means that they're going to try to reduce the property cost so that they can get rid of the house and not take any more losses, which also is going to aid you in being able to acquire you a house in a lower value. Note, just like with foreclosures, the cheaper the house is bought for, the cheaper the house is worth, because things are only as valuable as somebody else is willing to pay for them. So if you buy 20 houses in the area at half of market value, you just cut the market value in that neighborhood in half. Everybody's property value starts dropping if everybody's house is being sold at half of market value. So when you're thinking about negotiating downward to get you a good deal on your house, just note, your house is worth how much you're willing to pay for it, in addition to the other houses that were sold in your neighborhood at the time. So, I mean, while you do want to get you a really good deal, you also want to make sure that you are not shorting yourself in the long term. So, I did create you guys a pretty decent sized list. I think I do believe I gave you about 11 or so cities and states that are really good buyers markets to go take a look at. But one of the funny things that I've noticed about that is because they're all across the United States, is that the market average in those cities are not going to be the same across the country. So some of those places that are, it's a good value for where it's at, it's still way higher than another city or another state. So that's one of the things that I thought about considering when I was telling you guys about this topic. But I figure, first things first, let's go over some of the ways that you would pay attention to how you can get you a good deal even in a seller's market. Because if the house has been on the market for 284 days, it's been put back on the market 4 times over the past 7 years, nobody's buying this house. So the seller who's been trying to sell it for an extended period of time and changing out real estate agents because they're tired of paying the last real estate agent to get rid of it, they got a new agent trying to get rid of it, you're more likely to figure out what the fuck's going on with this house. Why is it not selling? Because typically inside of 6 months, the house is gone. Typically the inside of 3 months after the house is finished being renovated, the house is gone. House has been on the market for 6 months. One of the reasons why the house is in the market for 6 months is because the area that the house is located in is not friendly to buyers. So you have low income neighborhoods, you have high crime neighborhoods where people will not buy property in certain areas. And as a result, the property value of those properties go down. You have high noise pollution in certain areas. And that means that people are, block type shit. So you have stuff that people are not willing to buy into. So that reduces the property value. So high crime area is like shootings, a lot of police sirens and ambulances, break-ins, stuff to that effect will reduce the property value in the entire neighborhood. Shootings. That's why you see on a TikTok video that you scroll through and they say if you want to keep the property value of your house low, discharge a firearm within a reasonable vicinity of your house once a month to keep the property value low. Yeah, because it kind of increases the statistical average of shots being fired in your neighborhood. And that statistical analysis typically weighs against whether or not that's a reasonable neighborhood to live in. If shots are fired at least once every 30 days, that means that there's 12 alleged shootings a year. And if there's 12 shootings a year in that neighborhood, that's going to be considered a higher crime neighborhood than a neighborhood that probably hears gunshots on the holidays for 4th of July and New Year's versus once a year or never. So that also is some ways that you can regulate the property value of the place that you're trying to be in. But that's only if you're not trying to make money off of the property. If you're trying to make money off the property, you want the value to go up. So you don't want people shooting in the neighborhood, which means you don't want to buy a house where there's shootings in the neighborhood unless you're trying to keep this property and you don't give two shits about its value outside of mortgaging it one time to take the capital and put it somewhere else and do some other investing with it. Typically, the negative pitfalls of fix and flips, where the limited quantity of profit margin off of the property is going to be offset by all of the worst things that could happen with you when you're trying to buy this house, is going to be one of the reasons why you guys are going to, how you doing, Red Boy? Good to see you. You guys are going to not select certain houses in certain neighborhoods. But when you're buying a house with the expectations of renting it out, and then the debt that goes into the house is going to be offset by the profit you're getting from the house, your goal is to take the total cost of this house, divide it up over the 30-year fixed mortgage, or if you can get a 40-year or 45-year modified mortgage, the cost of the house is half of the rent or less. If you can manage that, doesn't matter how much the house costs. If the house is $500,000, but you're paying $500 a month for the house on a mortgage, you've got a tenant renting the house out for $1,000 to $1,500 or $2,000 a month. If the mortgage on the house was $800 a month and your tenant was paying $1,600 a month, you're still doing good because you have $500,000 worth of debt towards the house. The money you're getting from the tenant is considered by taxes going towards the mortgage. It's going towards the debt. So it doesn't matter if the house is $500,000 or $1 million for the house. If the tenant is paying the mortgage, and the difference between what the tenant is giving you and what you're putting on the mortgage is is double. So you're getting more money. Oh yeah. I'm gonna see you later. Oh yeah, I'm gonna be here tomorrow night, every night, 9 Eastern, 8 Central, 5 Pacific. So I'll see you tomorrow night. We got some different topics tomorrow night, but tonight we're gonna be talking about the real estate thing because I want to give people financial stuff. I real quick before you go, I told Red Void this yesterday. The guy actually talked to me. He's mailing me a book about investment opportunities, and when I get the book, I'm going to be bringing that up onto the show to kind of give you guys some tips and tricks on how to invest. And real estate is going to be in everybody's investment portfolio, and that's another reason why I'm doing today's show. But later on, I might actually end up getting this guy to come on to the show as a guest, and we'll be able to shoot the breeze and ask questions about investment strategies based on his years of experience in investment. So, I don't just sit here and talk about the inequalities that we experience in relationships and just make it seem like women ain't shit. We got a lot of low value women that we experience in our dating world, but we actually, as men, are required to increase our value in order for us to find higher value women, because men are judged by their resources, their financial wealth. Men are not judged by their character anymore. And since we're judged by our resources, if we're trying to find us a really good woman, if we're not going to fly to the Philippines to go get one, we got to increase our status. So we got to focus on ourselves, stand on our non-negotiable expectations for behavior, and improve our general wealth. So stop wasting money on hookups and spend more money on fixing ourselves. And then once we reach that level, then we will find more valuable women instead of the hood rats that we come across on a day-to-day basis that wants us to pay for their time and their attention, and they're not even valuing us as men. So I got a lot of shows that we talk about on a regular basis that talk about what we should be paying attention to, the difference between higher value and low value women, and how men should not allow themselves to be mistreated because men are focusing on sex as opposed to focusing on themselves being the prize for the woman. But at the same time, if you're not making $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year, I kind of want to help you guys get there. And there's no reason for you to be looking at these self-help videos, a 30-second video where they're telling you guys, oh, find a way to get out there and make you some extra money, and don't even tell you how to fucking get there. You can't tell me that on the other side of the Grand Canyon is a better way to go, but you're not going to tell me how to get to the other side of the fucking Grand Canyon. So if I'm not there and I'm trying to get there, or I was where you are now and I'm trying to help you get there, I feel like I should just tell you guys financial tips and tricks that you guys can utilize, that whether you take that advice or not, it's up to you. But if you utilize that, you'll be able to improve yourself in some way, shape, or form, where if, like I said yesterday, the day before that, if you have a 10-year plan, 20-year plan, that you can improve your tomorrow today, start working on that today. And by the time you reach that 10-year, 20-year scenario, you are now making more money and you don't have to work for somebody else. You see what they're about to do with the taxes. You see what they're about to do with employment. You don't want to be a W-2 employee in 2025 going forward. You want to be a small or big business. You want to be a C corporation walking around only having to pay 20% taxes and having 70% tax write-offs, tax deductions, where you could end up not being taxed on all the money that you're making legally, be able to invest and build wealth, build generational wealth, so that your children and your children's children will not have to struggle the way you struggle, because that's what every parent's dream is to leave a legacy for their kids. And every single man wants to live the life of Riley and be able to travel and not have not having to worry about where their money's coming from for the standard of living they have in America, while they're still spending money traveling to other countries. But at the same time, you still want to make sure that while you are commuting to these other areas and setting things up, you got to have extra cash flow. So I said, well, why don't I help my homeboys get this extra cash flow? So I told y'all in another show how we could go to different countries like Japan, Nagano, Japan. You set up a business in Nagano to give you 23,000 US dollars to set up a business over there. It costs $8,500 a year to stay over there. It costs us fucking $5,000 and $6,000 a month to stay in the United States. But you get $8,500 a year and live in Nagano. You set up a business, they're giving you 36 months and 3 weeks worth of living because you started a business over there and hired 2 people to work for you so you don't have to work. That's the kind of shit that you want to have. You don't want, and US isn't taxing you up to $120,000 worth of income that you get in another country. So you can make 120 grand over there and make 120 grand over here. And if you've got a C corporation, your 120 grand over here is going to be taxed 20%. Your 120 grand over there is not going to be taxed, but the tax write-off of the business is going to be written off of the overhead. So now you're not spending money on taxes. So instead of you sending 20 to 30% of your money to Project 2025, you will be pocketing that money and spending that money on your own business. You're going to be paying your workers. You could hire your family members as workers, hire your kids as workers. You could pay your workers, keep the money in house, write all this stuff off. These are the types of things that the rich used to do to stay rich. They just didn't tell anybody. And then they have an apprenticeship thing. It's called the Good Old Boys Club, where the old heads teach the young bucks before the young bucks are required to be responsible, what they got to do to build themselves up and be successful. The young bucks want to go out and party and have a good time. But the old heads is like, focus on how to make money, how to keep money, and how not to lose the money so that you have money for the rest of your life and your kids have money for the rest of theirs. And that's why they never go broke. Notice how, and I've been sitting here wearing $300 suits every time I come to the show. For the last 7 months, I'm putting on a $350 shoot for every show that I've come on, but I've had these suits for 13 years. Now, you sit over here and think about how every outfit that you're wearing is $150, $250, and you're buying a new outfit every 2 months to stay in the latest fashion. Last year's stuff don't even look good no more. And then you think about the fact that I haven't bought new clothes in 13 years, but I still look sharp as fuck. So I'm paying on average $100 a year or less for my $350 suits. And you guys are spending $10,000, $15,000 a year on clothes. I spent 20 grand on clothes 13 years ago, 14 years ago, and you guys are spending 10, 15 grand a year on clothes. The rich get rich because they only buy what they need when they need it. Yeah, some of them do flaunt. Some of them will buy base looking $5,000 pair of shoes. And only rich people know that that shoe is that value. But other people will look at that shoe and think, oh, that shoe is garbage because that shoe isn't a name brand that I recognize. The shoe does not have to be a name brand that you recognize for it to be a high quality material. So when I'm giving you guys advice on how to make money for you, you got to understand that some of this advice can actually be utilized worldwide. The only difference between how you're going to go about incorporating it in the United States versus how you're going to incorporate this in Romania versus how you're going to incorporate this in Philippines and Japan is the fact that in Japan, as an American citizen, you can buy properties. You can start up a business as an American citizen and buy as a foreign domestic company properties in Japan. But in the Philippines, you can do 25 or 30-year contracts. They may even have the type of 25 or 30-year contracts where you can build on that property and renovate on that property and still be able to have possession of the premises, even though you don't have ownership over the land. They also have land trusts. So in land trusts where you take the separate the land from the property, where you own the property, but you rent the land. So you can own the house and build up the house and have a deed, a restricted deed on that particular house, where that house belongs to one person and the land is still rented to the landowner. There is land trust for that. So there's different ways that you go about doing this in different countries. But yeah, on this show, we're not just talking shit on a daily basis. I actually like to tell you guys about ways that y'all can make a little bit of extra cash for yourselves and how to go about getting it done. Now, back to talking about in those buyers markets, when you're looking at those houses that are up there for an extended period of time, you're able to talk to the agent. The agent will talk to another agent about things that the agent wouldn't talk to a regular buyer about. So if you represent yourself as an agent, or if you're calling representing a real estate business or real estate investment business, and you're talking to them about some of the ins and outs of the property, they might give you a little bit of details that is not on the listing. And then they will tell you what's what with it. There are some things that you're just going to have to figure out after you gain ownership, but they're going to tell you a little bit more as a real estate investor than what they would tell you as just a home buyer. As a home buyer, they'll just encourage you to buy the property. As a real estate investor, they'll be like, well, family's going through probate and these other things that they've got going on. They're trying to make sure that these things get done in a reasonable period of time, and this, that, and the third. They'll tell you that they might actually be confident that the homeowner might be willing to go down on the price a little bit, or they may be able to tell you out the gate that we have had to forcibly convince the client to come down off the original price quite a few times over the span of its advertisement, and it's not likely that the client would be willing to reduce the value of the price any further than its current offer. And that lets you know that sticker price is sticker price. You either take it for what it is or you don't. There are still the ability to get tax credits on there, but the tax credits are added to the current sticker price. So if you are going to negotiate a as is, where they'll come off it a little bit, but you will waive the tax credits or the not the tax credits, the purchase credits from as is condition, where certain things need to be fixed, then they'll agree to sell you the house for a certain value because of the buyer credits that you are entitled to because of the condition of the house. All of these things that you take into consideration when you're trying to select the house that you're going to buy, so that when you do pick up that house house in and of itself actually is affordable for you, and you're able to turn it into a reasonable profit. Now, one of the things I want to do now is I want to kind of go into a few of some of the properties, not like properties in and of themselves. Like there are different locations, cities and states where these properties are pretty good valued, and you can kind of see the trends here. And when you're looking at the trends, you're looking at the downturn of people moving into that neighborhood, the upturn of houses being sold, and the quantity of people so when you're looking at population depreciation, you're looking at buyer's market. I can tell you that out the gate. Population depreciation, you're looking at a buyer's market. So if you're looking at a city or state that's been losing a 50 to 100,000 out of its million or so, where they're looking at like a 5% or 2% or 3% depreciation of residency over the years, you're looking at potentially experiencing more of a buyer's market than you would be a seller's market. Because a seller's market, you're going to see a increase of population moving into that city, which means that more people are buying houses than selling them, which means that there's going to be a lower quantity of available housing for sale and a higher quantity of people looking to buy a house in that area, because that area is more presentable to the average person. So what I said in the beginning is, hey, let's go and find a few places that is starting to reduce in available residency, where more people are putting their house up for sale and moving away, and less people are actually buying the houses that are for sale, and go and take a look at those. And that downturn of the population typically hints towards what's going to end up being a buyer's market, because you're going to have more houses for sale than houses being bought. There are statistics involved with that, how to see those statistics, and I'll probably go over a lot of those things more in detail with our members only podcast, when we exclusively release more detailed information to the members that pay for the membership on the YouTube platform. So on those shows, you're probably not going to see us air on TikTok, because unless TikTok gives us a stream key and allows you guys to subscribe to TikTok, then we'll stream to the membership on TikTok. But as it stands right now, when we do a exclusive to our members, our paying members, the membership will have just the people who paid to watch the podcast be able to see the in-depth information that we're going to be providing on those days. But for an overview, kind of to give you guys an insight as to some stuff that would benefit you with the buyer's markets, some of the things that is looked into is, you know, like I said before, what's the market look like? What's the average house being sold at? And one of the things that we come to find is that Delaware is one of the good places to find a buyer's market, where you're able to negotiate these properties down, you know, $20,000, $30,000, you know, sometimes more, depending on the condition of the house and how long the house has been up on the market. In Delaware, the median sale price of houses is $360,700. $360,700 is a lot of money to some people, but when you look at some of the houses that we're going to be talking about in Nevada and Florida that are upward of $500,000 or more, you're going to be coming to understand that $360,000 is not that big of a deal. In fact, there are other areas like Arkansas that are also offering houses around about $350,000 to $375,000. The only difference is that the median sale price of the house versus the square footage of land that you're going to get and the square footage of the house that's on that land actually determines the value in and of itself of what you're getting. So you'll see on certain real estate apps, they will show how much space is the house, how much land the house is on, and then they'll have another section in the advertisement of the house that shows you how many dollars per square foot the house is. Typically, anything between $50 and $100 per square foot for the whole land is a pretty good value, because it's not like per square foot for the house, it's per square foot for the whole property that you're getting. And that's probably a better value than $300-$400 per square foot, because you've got like a quarter acre of land on a 3,500 square foot house. That's actually, when you think about a quarter acre of land, 0.25 acres of land, and a 2,500 or 3,000 square foot house, you don't have that big of a yard. You're actually looking at like 5 or 10 feet or 12 or 15 feet of space between the house and the yard when you're looking at a 3,000 square foot house and a quarter acre of land. So just looking at these measurements, you start being able to think as a real estate investor, how much of if the median is about 265, I'm willing to spend about 250 to 300. You can go to this particular area, try to talk them down a little bit, maybe knock off 15,000 off of that 265, pick up a house for 2,500 even, which gives you an extra $15,000 profit, and then turn it into a rental property. I'm going to tell you again, turn it into a rental property, not just, you know, buy it, fix it up a little bit, use that $15,000 to fluctuate, fixing it up a little bit, and then put it back out there to sell it. No, I'm just going to tell you, buy it, hold it, buy it, keep that bitch. Because if you buy it now while the market is not all that lovely, and you hold on to it until the market is fucking phenomenal, if you decide to get rid of that house and it is a rental property at the same time, you could charge a whole lot more, because you're actually selling the whole business. If you put a house up for sale, a rental property up for sale, tenants inside, you can show the value of the amount of money that the property is turning about, plus the value of the property, which gives you a larger value when you decide to sell the property. You could sell the whole ownership of the property and the tenant with the income that the tenant is selling you. You can negotiate the amount of money that you're going to get from the tenant for the rent for that month into the value of the sell price of the house, where if the tenant is paying you $2,000 a month and it's going to take 60 days to close, you could take that $2,000 of rent out of the sell price and let them keep the rent money from the tenant and stop collecting rent money from the tenant for the 2 months that you're closing on the house. There's a lot of things that you can do when you're dealing with rental property. But one of the other things that we want to go on is that $360,000 value in Delaware is in a market with a median average of days where a house is on the market for 60 days, which is approximately 2 months. One of the other reasonably the same, but actually kind of less, is Indiana. Has a median price range of about $265,300, and they also have a 60-day market average. So if they're dealing with a 60-day market average in Delaware and in Indiana, you start looking at a certain region where the houses are being sold in about the same reasonable period of time. So if you go and find you a house that's 90 or 120 days unsold in a market where the average house is being sold 60 days, you're probably going to have you some negotiation room. You're also going to probably have some unspoken issues with that property, whether there's liens on a property, a mortgage that's unpaid. They may have foreclosure steps involved that has not been advertised yet. They may have litigation for ownership of the property where somebody died, the will wasn't readily given. One person wants it, one person wants to get rid of it. It could be a divorce. There could be a lot of things going on, which is the reason why the house isn't being sold. There could be somebody who doesn't want the house, is trying to sell it, but then decides to let a family member live in the house, take the house off the market. Then when that person moves away, they go back to trying to resell it again, and stuff to that effect. And all of these things can go to the reason why the house is still on the market for more than 60 days, more than 90 days, and the house is continuously being taken off the market and put back on the market. And it could just be the fact that nobody wants that house in the neighborhood or the city and state that house is in. Another house, $385,600, Georgia. The median house market in Georgia is 90 days, which is slower. So if you buy a house, it takes you 3 to 6 months to rehab the house. You put the house on the market, it's going to take 3 months to sell it from the day that you put it on the market, more often than not. Which means that if it takes you 3 to 6 months to fix it, and it takes you 3 months to sell it, you're looking at potentially having a hold period of 6 to 9 months or 9 to 12 months. These are the types of calculations that you're doing when you're trying to buy a house, when you're an investor, when you're trying to buy a house and you're trying to sell it to make money, or if you're trying to buy a house and rehab it, renovate it, flip it and turn it into an income, versus whether or not you're trying to buy the house and keep the house for yourself to utilize the house for your own personal gains. So all of these things are things that you look into and say, hey, yeah, this is exactly the spot that I want to be in, because knowing that house is going to be up there on average 90 to 120, 200 days, you already know that you can go to that person and say, hey, I'll give you $365 for that house out the door, and waive buyer credits, and that house is sold. So here we go, Tennessee. So after Georgia, I decided to slide to Tennessee, see what's going on with Tennessee. Tennessee is in the same regional area. You're looking at Eastern and Central America. Delaware is actually further East Coast, but Tennessee right next to Georgia. So you're looking in the same market region on the East Coast. I think Indiana is not so much in the same area, but Tennessee, Georgia, and Delaware in the same area. And you're looking at $393,000 houses in Tennessee in the median average, and a 90-day turnover time for these houses on average. And this is supposed to be the slow market trends. So they're expecting to sell the house within 30 days. When it starts getting more than 3 months, more than 90 days, that's a slow market trend. So you're starting to look at houses in that area, $390,000, $393,000, and you're finding a house that's been up for sale for 120 or 200 days. You're going to say, oh, well, that house is probably going to be $290,000 or $315,000, because they're trying to get rid of that house. They will shave $25,000 off the cost of the house and the sticker price. They'll shave it off because the house has been up there for 200 days. So looking at a 90-day average for a $393,000 house, you're more than likely to convince somebody to come off of that 20, 30 grand and get that $393,000 house for $375,000 or $360,000. So moving on to Nevada. Now, start going towards California. You're looking at what I was telling you before. California prices are going to be on the same magnitude as Florida prices. Nevada, right next to California, $458,300 for the median sale price for houses. So when you're looking at, and that's supposed to be the buyer's market. So you can only imagine $600,000, $700,000 houses being sold, no negotiations in the buyer's markets. But in Nevada, you're looking at certain houses that are $458,300, and they got a 60-day turnover. So when you're trying to pick houses over there, you see a house that's 120, 200 days on the market, ain't being sold. You might be able to ask them to come off 50 grand on that $400,000 house and walk away with that house. And that saves you money on the pickup. When you're saving money on the pickup, it saves you. If you mortgage it, you're saving money on overall. But if you're saving money on a pickup and then you're looking at the cost of the value of the house when you're dealing with the mortgage, if you mortgaged it after the fact, because you're going to mortgage it for 50% of the sell value, you can, after repair values, typically with brokers and real estate investors, typically do not more than 70% of the after repair value or market value of the house. But you're more likely to succeed with collateralizing a house at 50% of the value of the house, because they're going to want to sell it and they know that they're going to have to rehab it. So if you're looking at, the house is valued like $458,000, the probably pretty good mortgage level for that particular type of house would be $229,000, $230,000, round it up when you mortgage the property. So you buy the house for 450 grand, shave it down some, get them to come down off the price of the house. But if the average sale price in the neighborhood is $458,000, if you talk them into selling the house to you for $425,000 or $420,000 even, and then you're able to, knowing that the after repair value of the house or the market average in a neighborhood where that house was sold is $460,000, you know that you can get $230,000 mortgaged on that house, even though you only paid $430,000 on that house, which means that you got $200,000 of your money back that you could put towards another property, depending on the interest values. Which, might I want to state right now, as we're going in, the interest values on some of these properties are actually shifting, and you're looking at it going down from the 6.5% that it used to be. Right now, it's at about 5.15%. Last time I looked at it, it should be going down to about 4.75 to 4.5 by December. So if you're thinking about buying a house and you want to get better interest rates and you're going to be trying to use your credit to buy the house, I would say focus on your credit a little bit over the next 60 days. Get yourself a couple secure credit cards. Get you one really high value secure credit card that'll get you 50 to 75 extra points in your credit score and kind of boost you up, move you from a 6 to a 675, or move you from a 650 to a 720, so that you can get you better interest rates. And then once you shift yourself into that area, then you go out there in November and try to pick you up a house. For the rest of you guys that's trying to buy you a house in Q1, you're going to see a shift, but the interest rates are going to even be lower. So you might see, 475, 450 in Q1, Q2 of 2025. But the goal by December of 2025 is to see 315 to 375 in the market. So you just got to think about when you're planning on buying a house. You can wait a whole another year, or since you know that it's no longer 615, if you know that over the next 60 days, you can improve your credit score as the interest rates go down, which improves the overall value of the house. You also have to remember the market that you're going to, because every market is different. The closing cost for the property is going to be different in every state. It's not standard. So as I've gone over 3 other states before I got to Nevada, you've got to understand that actually I went over 4 other states before I got to Nevada. So including Nevada, I've covered 5 states, or I've covered 4 states. When you're looking at the closing costs, typically I overanalyze and I say, well, closing costs should be not more than 10% of the value of the house. But some places the closing cost is like 5%. Some places closing cost is 6 to 8%. So you look at the average closing cost in your market area, and you look at the interest rate, because the closing cost is going to add to the final sell value. And that's why if you're negotiating down $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 on the cost of the property, if the closing cost on the property is going to be $25,000 or $30,000, you can actually walk away with paying the $458,000 for the house out the door and not have to deal with the increase of closing costs. Because if you buy it at sticker price and they give you 5% of that, then you're looking at potentially paying almost $30,000 in closing costs on that $458,000 house, which means that your house is now $488,000. And then if you got interest on that at 5 or 10% interest on that, well, 5% or 6% interest on that, if you're doing lower credit, but better credit, you're looking at lower than 5%, 4%. So that $450,000 house on a 30-year fixed mortgage might give you a $1,200 to $1,500 a month house note, the mortgage note, which in comparison to the rent is fucking fantastic. But just think about the fact that if you're trying to make a reasonable monthly payment on your mortgage and you want your mortgage to be lower, you want the value of your house to be lower when you buy it, so that after the cost of closing is there, if you're going to mortgage the property to buy it, you want your monthly payments to be even lower. And then you also have to take into consideration that if you're going to be doing a no money down, which your financial institution that's going to front you the money, the average monthly payment is going to be higher than what it would have been had you put money down. So you want to take that into consideration as well. And the money that you put down is not going to offset your monthly payments. It's actually going to be taken out of the initial value of how much you owe them, and you still got to make payments along the way. So you can't say, oh, I'm gonna give them 6 months up front. No, that just means that you just made a massive down payment in the beginning. But Nevada's doing the 60 days out, and that's over on the West Coast. New Jersey back on the East Coast. Yeah, because New Jersey is out there by New York. So New Jersey back out on the East Coast, $532,400, still doing 60-day market average. So across the country, you're looking at the average house is supposedly being sold slowly on 60 days or more. 60 to 90 days is the market average. So again, even in New Jersey, if you're finding an apartment or a condo in New Jersey, New York or New Jersey that is looking at, $500,000 or $600,000, and that particular townhouse or something to that effect has been on the market for 150, 200 days, you might be able to shave that 532 down to 500 or 295. And then after closing costs hits, you're back to the 200 something thousand that you would have paid, but you're getting it out the door. North Carolina, another one, median sell, $360,700 with a 60-day turnaround on the market. Arizona, $450,800, which is almost $451,000 is the median sell price in Arizona. Arizona is over there by Nevada. Actually, Arizona is over in between Louisiana and Mississippi. Let's make sure that we remember our 50 states, but they're doing 90 days over there in the South. They're doing 90 days in the South. So on the East Coast, they got 60-day delays. On the West Coast, they got 60-day delays. In the South, they got 90-day delays, which means that in the South, you're looking at a $450,000 house in Arizona that might actually, 200 days in, be dropped down to 400,000 or 397,000, 375,000 as the median sell value. Now you're looking at you also got to understand that this is the median sell value of a house, not just a 3-bedroom house or a 4-bedroom house or an 8-bedroom house with 20 acres of property. This is just all of the houses in general. So since this is what they've got going on, you could potentially find a smaller house that might be 375 or 275. As opposed to the average house that is a 3 to 4 bedroom house with an acre or two of property in rural areas or in the urban areas where you have a townhouse that is of the same value that has no acreage that might be attached to a parking garage, or or in some situations when you're dealing with a apartment or condo scenario where you're spending this kind of money in a condo scenario. So take, for example, like South Carolina, $387,700 is like the median average to go and buy a house in South Carolina, but it's still showing the same trends that 90 days is the turnover time on average for houses. So when you're trying to find houses in a buyer's market, you are trying to find houses that are still up for sale, outlasting the average market sale date. So, 90 days is the average, 60 to 90 days is the average. You want to find houses that are still up for sale 120 days in, 200 days in. You want to go and grab a house that's been up for sale for 300 days. You want to pick up, if you're trying to negotiate down, on the price. But if you're trying to get a house right now, you got to pick out of whatever's available. But whatever's available changes every 30, 60, 90 days. The one of the most dominant places right now is Punta Gorda, Florida. And that's going to be because of the off turn of population. But Punta Gorda, Florida has a median home listing price of $425,000. And that's in an area where most of the houses are $525,000 and $700,000. So, you're looking at, while the median is $425,000, the average is way higher than the median. And you're going to be finding houses out there that are going to be more valuable. They're not going to have that much space. Yeah, acre, 2 acres, if you're lucky. More often than not, quarter acre, 3/10 of an acre, 4/10 of an acre is probably what you're going to be seeing. Some subdivisions. You're not going to see, like in Arkansas or Nevada, you're not going to see like a large quantity of woods in the backyard or a whole golf course for a field in the backyard or some shit like that. You're going to see in Punta Gorda, Florida, you're going to see like a house with a pool and a pond in the back, $475,000. You're going to see a house with a 2-car garage, 2-story house with a boat dock on the back. That's what you're going to see in Punta Gorda, Florida. But again, the market average in Punta Gorda, Florida is 90 days. But one of the reasons why they're dealing with that particular type of change in Punta Gorda, Florida is because during the pandemic, they had a big upturn in houses being sold in Florida, where everybody was moving away. And while everybody was moving away at that time, the house market was hotter. So all of the values everybody's house was being taken up quickly. And because of that, now the price values are being rectified, because less people are buying houses now than what people were buying when they were fleeing from other areas, and people were moving out of Florida, and some people were moving into Florida, and people were selling houses, people were buying houses, and the low supply, high demand just had a massive boom in Florida during the pandemic. But everything's starting to level off, and you're noticing in the stock market also that everything's starting to level off. I mean, take Bitcoin, for example. It went from 20 grand in 2023 to 72 grand in 2024. Anybody who put 20 grand down on a Bitcoin in 2023, it now has that same Bitcoin valued at 72 grand. If you're buying percentage shares of Bitcoin and you bought the value of 100% of a Bitcoin in 2023, and you sold half of the value of the Bitcoin that you have now, which is 72 grand, you actually could walk away with $36,000 off of your $20,000 investment, where you still have $36,000 of Bitcoin in your stock option that could potentially turn over multiple times in the next 12 months. These are the things, but you got to also remember, y'all, because the trends have always been, that I have seen actually, that Bitcoin peaks in October. It goes down for Halloween. It goes back up a little bit, goes back down right before Thanksgiving, goes back up a little bit, goes back down again right before Christmas, goes up a little bit in January, and then starts going on a rapid decline between January and March or April. One of the reasons why is because everybody starts pulling their money out in quarter one. February and March, quarter one, right after tax season, starts pulling out their money, spending it, and then they start putting the money back to not have to pay taxes on it by the end of quarter four. But you also see that they take the money out to celebrate the holidays. So you see the market trends where with Bitcoin, a little bit before the 4th of July, money will come out. You'll see a little bit before school starts, money will come out. But then money will go back in. So if you're paying attention to the market, when you're looking at stuff like this, you're able to see different trends, and you're able to see different values in the market that helps you with being able to buy and sell and invest. And again, if you're going in this to buy and hold, as opposed to going in this to fix and flip and sell, because your profit from a fix and flip is going to be a one-time payment. Your profit from a buy and hold is going to be a monthly annual payment, assuming that your tenant doesn't move out. I would tell you, in addition to that, think about Section 8. You think about Section 8, that is guaranteed income. Now, while you're looking at guaranteed income averaging sometimes less than the market average for rent, when you're looking at Section 8 housing giving you guaranteed money, do you really care that you're getting probably 20 or 30% less than what you would have gotten from a private buyer because it's Section 8, or do you care that you're actually making a guaranteed income every month off of this property, where all you have to do is take a percentage, keep the property up, and as long as the tenant is alive, the property will always be paid for. To me, I feel like if you're really going to do that, since 90% of America, 99% of America is financially challenged in some way, shape, or form, Section 8 housing for those individuals that are on a waiting list for 3, 5, and 10 years, it would be smarter for the average real estate investor to buy and hold rental properties for Section 8, because all you'd have to do is notify Section 8 that you have houses in this particular area that are available for utilization. They will find a tenant for you and then give you fixed income for that person for the remainder of the time that they're staying in that location, unless you evict them for damaging the property unnecessarily. But if you're dealing with private owners, you got to vet them. You got to make sure that they that they're capable of paying for your property, and then you've got to make sure that you stay on top of their ability to pay for your property, because a lot of the times people up the rent on a regular basis with the market, trying to maintain the expectations of what the investor wants to get in profits versus the market trends. Now, truth is, there are some Section 8s that will offer a percentage of the rent, where the property owner, the tenant still has to pay the remainder. But even still, you're getting a guarantee. You're getting 2 checks a month. You're getting 1 check from Section 8 that's going to pay a certain quantity, 80% of the rent, and then you have the tenant paying the other 20% of the rent, where you're still guaranteed to get the money, because if the rent is $1,000 and the Section 8 is willing to pay $800 of it, the tenant's only got to pay $200. It's less likely for the tenant to say, I don't got it, which means that you're more likely to get all your money on time. That's one of the best things to have when you're dealing with a rental situation, is that you're getting your money on time. Because contractually you can charge interest on it, but if they couldn't afford to pay your rent on time based on the contractual value that you gave them, charging them an extra $150 because they were late is not going to get them to pay the rent on time the next time, because now they could not afford the original $800, $1,000, $2,000, and you're charging an extra $150. If they couldn't afford the original value, they're not going to be able to afford the inflated value. So you can stick that on there, but all that's going to do is build up over time until you end up evicting them. Now, if you've got those people who can find extra ways to make extra money, they'll make multiple payments throughout the month. They'll be behind for 6 months, but they'll play catch up, and they'll keep paying the interest and keep paying the rent for the whole year, until such time as you raise the rent to the value of the interest on the rent. And up until once you raise the rent to a level where they can't afford to pay for it, then they'll move out, and then you got to move somebody else in. If you're trying to maintain inflation profits, you're going to keep raising the rent regardless of the condition of the property, just so that you can keep your money inflated. But truth is, if the rent was the rent, the same way it would be with Section 8, your tenants would never leave. You got guaranteed income. The value of the property is going to go up regardless of whether or not the tenant continues to pay extra money. And regardless of whether or not the property taxes is going to go up because of the value of the property, doesn't change the fact that taxes versus loans and interest rates and stuff offsets profits. So if you're still taxes and mortgages aside, spending 60% of what the tenant is giving you for the possession of the premises, you're still making 40% profit off of the house. In addition to what the tenant is paying. The tenant's paying for the mortgage, and the tenant's paying for the taxes. And then you get to keep the rest. So if you're not greedy about it, you could potentially be able to grab yourself a pretty reasonable house. So one of the best places to go to find a buyer's market right now is, how do you pronounce this place? Lubbock, Texas, y'all. And they got median home listings at $253,500, which is pretty low in comparison to all the other houses that I told you that were over $300,000. You swing around there by Texas, market average in Texas, 55 days. There was a big upturn of 80% more houses for sale than from last year in Texas. So they're not selling as many houses as are going up for sale. And then obviously depending on the location of the houses that are going up for sale, you're looking at a lot more people moving away because they've got a lot more homeless problem, because they've got a lot more immigrants going to Texas, crossing the border. So with the border problem, you're going to have the value of properties going down because people are not buying and selling real estate, and they're reducing the cost of their houses. And because they're reducing the cost of their houses, the people are not, people don't want to stay there. People are moving away. The less desirable the neighborhood is, the lower the value of the house. That's just, it is what it is. But what you can do is you can make it into something profitable. You can buy the house because it has a very shitty value. You can put it up for rent as a Section 8 property, and a homeless person who's got the U.S. government paying their rent for them, will move into that shitty property and love it because they're no longer on the street. So again, the difference between apples and oranges as far as profits versus debts, when you start dealing with the difference between a property that is not valuable to a real estate tycoon versus you offsetting your losses by getting what would be considered a lower valued property or a less respected property from a business tycoon, somebody who might want to do trusts where they're setting up investment properties and they want to get the most valuable ones, and you're trying your best to offset that trust. I mean, those people might say, nah, I'm not going to buy that house because that house isn't going to generate enough revenue. You starting up your real estate business might look at that property and say, well, I've got 2 or 3 of them turning out a large quantity of profit. I can take a lower quality property and add that in and offset my debt, which means that I have more debt, but the tenants are paying for all the debt, so I can still pick me up some more profits. I can use that profit to expand on my business. For every 2 properties that you buy that are almost $400,000 to $500,000 in value, you could take 50% of the value of those two houses, put it together, and go buy you another house, cash up front. So if you've got 2 $400,000 properties with tenants in them, and you mortgage both of those properties for $200,000 a piece, you got $400,000 to buy another $400,000 property. You got 3 tenants paying for the mortgage on 2 houses. And if $200,000 is stretched across 30 years, you're paying less than $10,000 a year on that property across 10 months, which means you're paying less than $800 a month on that property for the mortgage. So if your property is looking at $600 or $700 a month for the mortgage, and your tenants are paying you $1,200 or $1,500 a month for that same house, because typically rent across the board typically is usually around $1 per square foot for rent for a 1-bedroom apartment, and $2 per square foot per rent for a 2-story apartment. So, I mean, if you've got a 2,000 square foot apartment, 2,000 square foot house, you're typically going to see that house at least be valued at $1 per square foot for a single story house, where that $2,000 house will be valued at $2,000 or $2,500 for rent. 2-story house, $2,500 or $3,000 a month. So if you bought it for $400,000 and you got a mortgage on it for $200,000, and the mortgage is only going to run you $800 a month, and you're pocketing $2,500 a month for the rent because of the size of the house, 30% of the rent is going towards the mortgage. You're going to take a little change out, put it towards the property taxes. You're still walking away with more than half of that $2,500 a month, which means that you actually could do that a shit ton of times. For every 2 houses you buy, mortgage 2 houses, get $400,000 and go and buy 1 more house. And then next year you got 3 houses, you go and buy you a 4th house, mortgage those 2 houses, buy another house, which means you should be able to buy 2 to 3 houses a year. When you start bringing in a large enough quantity of capital, you should be able to buy 2 to 3 houses a year, 4 or 5 houses a year, 6 houses a year. The first year, 1 house, second year, 2 houses, third year, 4 houses, 4th year, 8 houses. Your expansion rate. And that also is going to be dependent upon the quantity of capital that you're getting overall versus your capability to invest some of that capital instead of just spending it, versus your ability to borrow against a stone and not only use the assets of the property that you have in real estate, but also get cash loans towards stocks and bonds and mutualities that you are investing in the long run. So you would be able to utilize that as well to give you cash loans that you can utilize to buy more properties. You could go and buy some tax liens and tax deeds where you can pick up properties. You can find, I just seen on TikTok, as a matter of fact, somebody was saying, hey, $50, you can go somewhere and you can go to your local clerk's office, and you can go get a listing of all of the properties that are in mortgage trouble. I mean, not mortgage trouble, tax trouble, where you can contact those cold call property owners and find out like if they're trying to sell, and if they're not trying to sell, you could try to work out a deal where like you could flip your money. You already know that they're going to pay you 18% interest on the property. You could actually go to the homeowner and be like, hey man, you're behind on your taxes. You know, I got an opportunity for you. You know, I'll pay your taxes for you for this period of time, and you pay me this much money per month towards your taxes to pay me what you owe me for your taxes. And then put a lien on the house for the amount of money that you're fronting them for the taxes. But so you'll get your money back one way or another. They're either going to foreclose on the house where you're going to get paid off the foreclosure, or you're going to get paid back on the property taxes. U.S. government gives you between 18 and 25%, depending on where you're going, to do these for tax liens, where you pay the taxes, and then when the resident, the homeowner, pays the U.S. government the back taxes, the interest goes back to you. You get reimbursed. That's on tax liens. But if you want to get a list of all of the available properties that are behind on their taxes, and you want to go find the ones because they have a retention rate, and you want to go find the ones that has surpassed their retention rate. If you're owning a bunch of real estate, like all of this advice that I'm giving you off of real estate, and you go and start doing tax liens as well, you're looking at going to pick up properties that are not favorable, and you can pick them up for $5,000 or less, $250 sometimes, depending on where you're buying those properties at. And when you're doing that, you're able to then either wholesale it, where you took the house, or not wholesale it, but you technically kind of a wholesaler, because you're going to get it for the cost of the taxes, and then you're going to hold the ability to exercise the ability to foreclose on a property, gain ownership of the property, and then you sell it to somebody else for more than what you paid to get it. You can let the house go for $50,000, $70,000. You paid $10,000 to get the house. You can let it go for $70,000. You can let it go for $150,000 for a house that could be sold for $300,000, but you just don't want to put the effort into renovating the house. So you could do that. And then when you do that, you get those dividends back. That is going to offset the overhead. And one of the things you want to do with offsetting the overhead is take the profits that you get and invest that into another real estate investment, or invest it into stocks and bonds and mutualities. Invest it into Tesla, Apple, T-Mobile, Dodge. Their market is actually doing good right now. There's a lot of different places where you can put your money as far as top 5% stock options, and invested in that, and it's on an upswing. And then you could just set it up where you could get paid, your trust could get paid residual money, your trust could give you residual money, and because you're getting residual money from your trust, you're looking at debt-free, tax-free, liability-free, because everything else is already covered everywhere else, and taxes has been paid everywhere else. So all of this money that's sitting somewhere that's coming to you, you're getting $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a month guaranteed money. You don't got to do shit, because the money was made somewhere, it was spent somewhere else, it was invested somewhere, the taxes was paid somewhere else, or taxes was written off on the value of that money, and then that money is now sitting into a bank account that's issuing you money every month, so that you don't got to worry about where your money's going to come from. And because it's issuing you a limited quantity of money every month, even if you spent all the money that they gave you last month, you're going to get another check next month. So these are the ways that you're able to build guaranteed wealth for your kids. So if you got those kids that are not very productive, they're lazy, they're not very responsible, but you don't want them to suffer. You're setting up the type of spider web of business ventures where your kids will have residual income coming into them so that they don't have to struggle. And even with their bad choices, they should be reasonably stable outside of that. And that's one of the ways that you can give something back to your kids, where your kids are able to have a lifetime worth of wealth where they don't have to suffer. And I mean, if that's the least that you could do, if not the best that you can do, is to make sure that no matter what your relationship is with your kids, if you can set up some type of lineage for your kids where your kids have something to fall back on, that's the best thing that you can do. Now, I know for those of you that are growing up in those families where the wealth isn't already there, and you got to build that wealth over the next 20, 30 years, like I said, get you a 20-year plan. But if you've got brothers and sisters and stuff like that you're trying to look after, and you're going down this path like I'm talking to you about, you're investing in all of these properties and you're trying to build a business, and after you've built the business, you're setting it up in a way where you can start funneling money towards these trusts that would give your siblings reasonable capital. They'll have less stress on their plate because they'll be getting a residual income every month from your investments. So basically, their bank account will be getting a direct deposit every month from the shit that you did, which alleviates their financial strain. So I recommend that you guys take this stuff into consideration. We got a lot of things going on for us tomorrow, Thursday. I can't remember what we're doing. We got so many things going on, and I've got to actually start setting up the next 20 days, because I know that we typically have a 30-day calendar, but if I remember correctly, that the list ended on the 18th of October. So I'm trying to put up a lot more shows for October going into November. Since we're already on the 25th or 26th of September, I'm trying to make sure that we have a lineup going into October, November. So I'm going to be going ahead and wrapping it up early and trying to figure out mapping it out about what all we're going to talk about. Because like we talked about the other day was what do we do with the original traditions of Halloween and stuff to that effect. And now we're talking about investment strategies and stuff to that effect is supposed to be coming up soon. So I'm going to be trying to gauge these shows and see which days out of the week that we can put them up there. And as I come up with some pretty decent discussion topics for us to have, because we can talk about all kinds of theoreticals, make sure that y'all jump in and learn something. Because even in Romania, while the values are going to be different in Romania, the market trends are still going to be the same. You're going to be able to see places where more people are moving away from as available properties to be bought. And you're also going to be able to see that if you're buying it and using it as a rental property, somebody will rent it from you because people need places to stay. So as a renter, as a home owner, when you're renting properties, if you are dealing with more desperate people, you're able to charge them a security deposit, charge them like a blanket of fucking up the rent kind of deposit that they give you up front. And that's why in America we say first month's rent, last month's rent, and a security deposit. And what that does is you pay 60 days worth of living, and the security deposit is separate because the laws say that the security deposit does not impact the rent. So that money is separate, and that goes towards covering any damages when they move out. But you can put that in a high interest earning account where the whole time that you own their security deposit, that their security deposit is making you profits. And then when you return that security deposit to them, you're giving them the principal, but you keep the interest. Think about that. But also, if they're giving you 2 months of rent up front, that does not contribute to the rent. It is a deposit to move in, which means that they still got to give you the monthly rent on the contract. So if they give you 2 months in advance and then they're going to pay you every month after that, they just fronted you 2 months of rent as a deposit to move in. So if in the event that they fall behind on the rent, here's the nifty trick about that particular method. Because if let's say your rent is $1,000 a month, let's say that your security deposit is $500. Let's say you want $2,000 plus a security deposit, which is $2,500 a month. And then they're going to move in and pay $1,000 a month. In America, typically they go through the eviction process 60 days of non-payment on the rent. So if you gave me your security deposit, you gave me 2 months worth of rent. If you don't pay your rent for 2 months, I can evict you. I'm not out any money, or I'm not out that much money, because I will be out the money for costs of court. But typically, when you sue that person for eviction, you typically add the cost of court to the bill of the eviction. And in order for them to get the eviction removed off of their rental history, off of their credit score, because you put it on their name as a lien for up to 7 years that they owe you this, and collection opportunities can occur, including, if not limited to, garnishing wages, if you can show that they have the financial capital to pay the rent. The cost of court goes into that. So then you get reimbursed off of that. So if somebody says, well, I'm trying to fix my rental history, what do I got to pay? Well, you still owe me X number of dollars for me evicting you out of the house. So they may charge you another $3,000 to $5,000 more because they evicted you, but you ultimately end up getting most of your money out of the house, and you're not as much of a financial bind. So in the first year that they move in, they might give you 2 months worth of rent and then pay for the next 12 months. But if they're 2 months behind, you kick them out. I mean, unless you have a hard and you don't want to do that. But this is the strategies where investors are not in as much of a financial loss, but any financial loss that they do come across ends up becoming written off on their taxes as a deduction for an expense or a debt or a loss. Financial losses are written off as taxes. So just take that into consideration when you're doing your real estate deals and tricks and trivia. So with that being said, since I pretty much exhausted this particular topic today, we're going to turn a shit ton of shorts with this video coming soon. Make sure that you guys like and subscribe. And remember, for those of you that are still popping in right now, that we are live 9 Eastern, 8 Central, 5 Pacific. So you guys should always come back, because we always got a different topic most nights of the week. So whatever we're talking about tomorrow is going to be different from the real estate topic that we talked about today. But I do like to have real estate and investment topics throughout the week, throughout the month, so that we can find ways to improve ourselves financially and make ourselves better as men, whether we are able to financially support the family that we have right now, or make ourselves financially successful enough for us to be able to increase our family and add girlfriends and wives to our overhead in the future. Whatever we decide to go about doing, I feel like it is always better for us to be able to improve our standard of living for ourselves and the people that we care about. So I just want to give you guys tips and tricks that you can actually benefit from, not just saying, hey, it's a good idea. Nah, really, it is a good idea. I'm doing it too. So as successful as I become, you can't say that it couldn't happen, because I did it and I told you so. So there it is. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you this, ladies, every night of the week, as long as the situation doesn't make sense, I'm going to have to ask you ladies to make it make sense. So ladies, make it make sense. And for the rest of you guys that are still hanging out with me from YouTube and Twitch and Twitter, I really appreciate you guys coming, because y'all make the show. Definitely, we had a lot of insight from some new heads to pop in today. So that was pretty interesting. So we are going to, look at that. We had a very low turnabout today, probably because they seen real estate in the heading. But, it's whatever. Either way, I really appreciate you guys coming to the show. I noticed we had a lot of people stick their nose in from TikTok and Twitch and Twitter, but not a lot from Twitter in and of itself in comparison to most days. Either way it goes, it doesn't matter. What matters is that as a small podcast, we're growing. And as we grow, we're going to be doing bigger and better things. We're going to be having some guest stars come to the show. We're going to be doing a lot of topics that's going to be beneficial for everyone, as well as really start bringing some more knowledgeable people to the podcast and talk about some things that we can benefit from, and we can ask questions and get some more knowledge. Because in an open forum, open-minded podcast, I mean, it's interesting that very few times that I air the podcast that people have an actual opinion to share. I understand that, truthfully, that more often than not, people like to watch the podcast and listen. But this is a very interactive podcast. Whenever you guys remember that this is an interactive podcast. And when you guys interact, you will come to find out that there's a lot more to talk about when more than one person is talking. But until you guys got something to say, hey, I'm going to host a show and we're going to enjoy our time. And I'm going to give you guys insight and information, whether I motivate you, whether I inspire you, whether I educate you. Either way it goes, it's going to be worth watching, not just for entertainment, for the increasing of the value of a man's life. So I appreciate you guys for coming to This and That. I'm your host, Xander, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. And I will see y'all tomorrow night. You have a good night, Red Boy. Thank y'all for coming.